Dennis O'Brien. I'm back on Let's Talk About It. I took a week off last week out there in the community doing, as Susan says, good works. And Susan is taking the night off tonight because, sometimes, as Matt Rupar knows, I've complained a bit about it's harder to interview people when you do it with a co-host. And because you start asking a line of questioning. Um, by the way, my guest tonight is attorney Matt Olkin from Willimantic. And he will understand this because when you're in court and you start asking a line of questioning, you don't want somebody interrupting you. But if you have a co-host on a radio show, sometimes if I take a breath, Susan will jump in and start a new line of questioning, and sometimes that annoys me. And she would be if she's listening tonight, and she probably is. Susan, sorry, but that's the way it goes. And you do a great job. And sometimes Susan does the show by herself. And sometimes I'd say, Sue, the show tonight is about healthcare programs, Medicare, Medicaid, stuff like that. I said, I'm just going to sit there while you talk because you know that stuff cold. But tonight the topic is probate court, and as our regular listeners know, people who have been listening for a long time, I served as Wyndham's probate judge, actually for Wyndham in Scotland, from 1999 to 2011. When I left because I aged out. I got old. And anyway, we're going to lose our current probate judge who's doing a great job, John McGrath, because time flies, and John is going to be aging out, and he's going to have to leave the probate court in, I think, the spring of 2025. Is that correct, Matt Olkin?
That's my understanding.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
I want to say a little bit about you mentioned our sponsors, okay? They always mention our sponsors at the beginning of the show. Now, Gates GMC, Nissan, and Columbia Ford Kia, the Gates guys, okay, they have been sponsoring our show for 25 years. 25 years. The show started with Susan Johnson and Alan Giordano. I couldn't be on the show. Here's the probate connection. I couldn't be on the show because at the time, it was 1998. The fall of 1998, when Colin Rice came to me and asked me to co-host the show, the first evening talk show ever, as far as I know, on WILI, asked me to co-host it with his pal, Alan Giordano. And I said, well, I can't really because I'm running for a probate judge, and I know you guys don't want to promote me on the air. That's not what you guys do. So he said, well, how about Susan? Is she available? And I said, I don't know, why don't you ask her? And he did, and the rest is history. But because I was running for probate judge in the fall of 1998, I could not be on the show at that time, and I didn't get on the show for a few more years later. And but I've been on it for more than 20 years with Susan, and it's been a great run. And like I said, it was because I ran for the probate court. And I'll tell you, serving in the probate court to me was probably the best thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I've done a lot of great things. Because the probate court, people come to the probate court who are needy people, right, Matt? I mean, the people who have relatives who have passed away or friends or relatives who need help of a conservator. And sometimes in the children's court, kids who are not attending school regularly, stuff like that, or who are not being parented well. And, needy people need somebody with a big heart. And I worked in legal aid for a long time. And when I got into the probate court, it was just like working in legal aid again. It was different format. I was a judge. I wasn't an attorney. But John McGrath spent a lot of time in legal aid as well. He was well prepared. Pat Prue, who preceded me, also spent some time in legal aid. And Matt Olkin, you help out a lot of people here who are in need.
I do.
Definitely.
I have a lot of different people in the community who I've represented in a lot of different capacities, and I've seen a lot of the issues that are dealt with in probate. And I've done a lot of probate work myself, but also a lot of work in the family courts and in child protection matters in the juvenile court. And you don't really understand how those things work until you actually get involved and you see the actual practical implications to the people involved.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I felt like I was at home when I got to probate court. I was chief litigator for in the state of Connecticut for the legal aid programs for several years. And when I went into the probate court, I didn't realize that the probate court's mission was so important, so difficult, and I didn't realize the high quality of the judges that we have in the probate court. I was proud to be a probate judge, and I did it for 12 years. And I wish I could have done it for 40. I mean, it was a great job, fulfilling, and the most important, I like to feel I'm helping the community, and I help the community a lot. And I know that's one of the reasons why you want to succeed John McGrath as the local probate judge.
Correct. It's a tremendous opportunity to do something that makes a difference to people in your local community. And it's not very often that you get the opportunity to serve your local community. And that's why I'm looking forward to getting that opportunity if I can.
Yeah, I want to change the subject for just 1 second. I talked about starting on this show. Let's talk about it. Back in 1998, Susan started. I started a few years later. But I wanted to mention Gates, GMC, Nissan, Columbia, Ford, Kia, the Gates guys, Craig and Denny. Craig and Denny Gates have been they have treated us so well over the years, bringing this show to you every Friday night. Denny's been a guest on the show many times, and he's due for a return visit. We always have him come on and talk about what is the state of the auto industry. He will tell us about cars and what kind of cars they're making, what kind of cars they're selling, and and it's all straight information. It's all great. I mean, he does a great job doing that, and he loves to be on the air. Denny Gates if you know him, Denny Gates likes to talk, and so do I. So when we're on together, it's like very competitive. We both do a lot of talking, and then of course there's Susan, because Susan knows a lot more about cars than I do. I'm going to tell you one little story. When we were dating, decades and decades ago, and we were both driving cars that were not in very good shape. We didn't have any money, not much anyway. And I would be driving my car, and we'd be out on a date, and it would break down. And Susan would say, "No worries, open the hood." I'd open the hood, just sit there. She'd be messing around underneath the hood, doing this, that, and the other. Okay, go ahead, start it up, and we would be on our way. That's your state representative, folks, Susan Johnson. Believe me, I've been with her for so long. She can do just about anything, and she will do just about anything to help somebody. And by the way, Susan Johnson is also supporting Matt Olkin for probate court. Susan Johnson is a big supporter of Matt's, and Mayor Tom DeVivo as well. I'm not alone in supporting Matt. A lot of Democrats supporting Matt. There's a Democratic primary coming up, Matt. Let's talk about it.
It's a very important one, and it's the only thing that's going to be on the ballot. It's on August 13th, and the only question before the Democratic voters is, are you going to vote for me, or are you going to vote for the other candidate to be the Democratic representative in the general election on November 5th?
That's right. And there's also early voting as well.
There is, and the early voting's been extended, so that you have quite a long time period to get in there and cast your vote. It goes from August 5th through the 11th, and you just go to your regular voting place, and you can put in your early vote. You can also get an absentee ballot if you anticipate you're not going to be in town on the date of the election, but you want to make sure to get your vote in, because it's going to count more than ever in this election, because there's only this one thing on the ballot, and the turnout is going to be lower than it generally will be in an election where there's more things on the ballot. Anybody's vote could be the one that decides this election. Every vote counts much more than it usually would, and it's important that the Windham residents and the surrounding towns make their voices heard, because if they don't, the decision about who represents the Democratic Party in the November election, it's going to be made by somebody else.
Very well said, Matt. And I want to explain a little bit how we came to this point. Now, what happens in any election that involves a district with multi-towns in it is they have a convention. And the convention in the Democratic Party for the position of succeeding John McGrath as probate judge was held on May 28th. And Windham had delegates there, all the 6 towns. And the 6 towns are what, Matt? You know the 6 towns.
Yeah, well, it includes Colchester and Windham. Those are the two biggest towns. And you've got Lebanon, also a substantial town. And you got the smaller towns surrounding Windham. You've got Chaplin, Hampton, and Scotland. So the two main hubs are really Windham and Colchester.
Yeah, Windham is definitely the biggest town, and also Windham is definitely the town which generates the most work for the probate court. Windham is the hub of the probate court, no doubt about it. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But anyway, we had the convention on May 28th, and there were three candidates actually, two from Colchester. One dropped out, and there was another candidate from Colchester, and Matt emerged victorious in the convention, and he got a lot of support from the area towns right around here: Windham, Chaplin, and Lebanon, and but the candidate who lost filed for a primary, and that's why this primary is coming up in the Democratic Party on May 13th. That's a Tuesday, May 13th, and the vote in Windham will take place at the usual polling places. There's three of them. There's the VFW, there's the Windham Center Firehouse, and there's also the Elks Club on Pleasant Street. And if you vote in those places for your regular election, that's where you'll vote if you vote on Election Day, May 13th. Now, in Windham, if you vote early, you don't vote there. You vote at the town hall. The early voting in most towns, I think, is being conducted at the town hall. I know it's being conducted at the town hall in Windham. Okay, and the early voting is, as Matt said, it's 7 days. It goes from Monday the 5th of May, of August, Monday the 5th of August through the 11th of August, Sunday. There's a day off on the 12th. There's no voting on the 12th of August, but on the 13th is the day that you can vote at your regular polling place. So there's plenty of opportunity for local Democrats to vote. Now, this is just for Democrats. Unaffiliated and Republican voters cannot vote in this primary. I believe there's a Republican primary going on for state Senate at the same time, but they will get a different ballot. They won't be voting on the same ballot that we Democrats vote on. So anyway, got to remember, to vote, Democrats. It's really important. As this could be decided by one vote, as Matt pointed out. And I know the last time we had a primary for probate, it was when I left. When I was John McGrath was vying to succeed me, and he too was nominated by the convention, and was challenged by a candidate from Colchester. And in fact, John McGrath won the primary, and I'll tell you the turnout was pretty low. And on that election in 2010, there was a gubernatorial primary as well, and still the turnout was low. So August is a tough time to vote, but folks, it's really, really important to get out and vote in this primary. And if you do vote, I, Dennis O'Brien, and I'm former probate judge, was judge for 12 years, was also elected by my fellow judges to be the chief judge of the Children's Court, which covered a county and a half, all of Windham County and half of Talon County. Judge McGrath is doing that now. So anyway, I know the probate court backwards and forwards, and I know that Matt Olkin is the right person for the job, definitely. So Matt, let's talk a little bit about your background and where you're from. Or didn't you told me you went to NFA, Norwich Free Academy?
That's right. I grew up in Norwich, and I graduated in the class of '87. One of the members of my class was the Honorable John Newsom. He's now on the Superior Court
bench. I knew
bench.
John's mother very well.
Really?
She worked in my law office in Willimantic for several years.
Oh, really?
Dolores Newsom. She was a great person, and was a executive secretary in the legal aid office. And I remember John when he was a little kid.
Really?
And then John played football.
He did.
And he was very, very good.
He was very good. He was not any taller than I was, but he was tremendously strong and tremendously determined. And it was only I'm told after he got hurt in college that he considered going a different route professionally, and decided that he wanted to become an attorney. But up until that point, he was always the preeminent jock on campus.
Yeah, right.
And because NFA is a campus high school, it's unusual that way. But he was respected by everybody because of the way he carried himself. He was tough, but he was always sticking up for the right thing to do. He never bullied anybody. He never tolerated seeing people be bullied. And he was somebody that if you earned his friendship, you were proud to call him a friend.
Though I'm still working in the legal business, I spend most of my time representing the towns of Andover and Chaplin, and I don't do a lot of work in the Superior Court. And so I haven't run into John as a judge, but I've heard a lot of good things about him. I've heard a lot about his, how he cares about people, how he's willing to listen, and how he's willing to make a decision that makes sense. And he doesn't want to, put anybody in a situation where it's going to mess up their life semi-permanently or permanently. He's a real caring individual, and I'm proud to say that he spent a lot of years in his youth in Willimantic. So he's a product of Willimantic and Norwich. I'd say that's pretty good.
I would think that he would make a good probate judge because I know that he can empathize with a lot of the situations that you're presented with in probate cases where there's a need for some kind of service or intervention by the court or social services to try to set things right, and he would know what's appropriate because he's seen it himself. And he's someone who has the sense to be kind but tough at the same time, and knows how to dole them out in appropriate quantities depending on what the situation needs. I haven't appeared before him in court, but I've been in his courtroom and watched him work, and he's always tried to get across to somebody that he is able to see where they're coming from before he imposes whatever it is he's going to impose. And that's the type of judge that I would hope to be, where I wasn't sending down edicts from on high, but I was trying to issue an order that I would try to show people why it was something that made sense for everybody, but it took into account everybody's point of view.
Yeah, that's really what you have to do. You have to try to do something that makes sense for everybody. Sometimes there's somebody who's in the wrong, and that doesn't mean that you ruin their life. You just try to make everybody walk away feeling they've been treated fairly and that you've listened to them. And I like what you said about being kind but tough. I like to think of myself that way, and I think I serve that way as a judge of probate. I know John McGrath, the current judge of probate, is doing that right now. And wow, it seems like only yesterday when he succeeded me in the probate court, and that was in 2011. And wow, how did it get to be 2024 already? So he's going to have to step down next year, and the court is going to really miss John and his special way of dealing with cases. And I just can't believe it, but it is a fact that it says in the state constitution when you reach a certain age in the probate court you have to retire. There's no choice about it. Anyway, I think that the probate court in Windham, as far back as I can remember, as far back as I go, has been blessed with really capable judges, if I do say it so myself. And that would include Patrick Prue, who works upstairs in this building, because he served as judge before I did. And Pat was a great judge, and I think I did pretty well, and John McGrath is terrific as well. So we need somebody like Matt Olkin to succeed these guys. I think that would be a real good thing. The Windham Probate Court, in various iterations, because there was a time when the town of Windham included parts of Chaplin. Chaplin was made up of parts of Mansfield and Windham and maybe Scotland. I don't know, but it was a combination. It was I guess it was based on the need for a congregational church, and it was set up. But Scotland, of course, was in the probate court Windham probate court when I was a judge, and and Hampton was definitely once part of Windham, and so you got the Windham probate court and the Windham community have gone through lots of changes in over 300 years in their existence. Now, when I was in the court, I learned about 3 years or so before I left that in about 6 years the court would be celebrating its 300th year of existence. And that's mind-boggling, because when you calculate back to the Constitution of the United States, the Revolutionary War, 300 years, that's way, way back. That's way before that any of that happened. And the Windham Probate Court, in and of itself, in various iterations, now with 5 other towns, was the 3rd oldest court ever in the state of Connecticut. And don't forget, Connecticut is a pretty old state. So nationally, this is one of the oldest courts right here. The one we have right here in our Windham Town Hall that's a basic place for it right there. Is one of the oldest courts, I think, in the whole United States of America, and that is a proud tradition, and it needs to be upheld. And the court is in 6 towns, but the biggest town by far in terms of not only the population but also the needy population. We have a lot of seniors here, we have a lot of low-income people here, and those are the people that tend to use the probate court the most. So the need for probate court centered in Windham, which is centrally located to Hampton, Scotland, Chaplin, and Lebanon, is perfect. I mean, so this is why I'm so excited. In addition to his obvious capabilities, this is why I'm so excited that I got a call one day from Attorney John Nimlo telling me that, you know what, Matt should definitely be our next probate judge, definitely. And I talked to Matt, and we got to know each other, and I readily concluded that he was right. Readily concluded. So a lot of people are saying that now, and we're all excited about this primary coming up. But Matt needs, in order to go on to the November 5 election, as Matt noted, he needs to win the primary, and that's not easy. Not with a low turnout election. This is not a condemnation of the electorate, but it's just based on my experience over 40 years in politics. I've been involved in a lot of different elections. The one that comes to mind, that's closest to this, is when there was a primary for High Sheriff of Windham County, and that was very similar, low turnout election, because a lot of people didn't have a real strong interest in who was the sheriff. But I'll tell you what, if you need the probate court, you're going to care a lot about who the judge is, because it makes a difference. Because the probate court, talk about some of the things that the probate court does, and I'll chime in.
Well, first and foremost, it's responsible for seeing that everybody who deceases, everybody who passes away, has their estate properly administered. There's a misperception out there. Some people believe that you can avoid probate, quote unquote. There is no way to avoid probate, not in Connecticut. You have to go through probate. But that is, as I see it, a good thing, because it ensures that there is some oversight to the process. It ensures that there is a check against abuses of the process. It's a way to ensure that the person who passed away, that their wishes, whether expressed in a will or whether the statutory mandated distributions of their estate, which is covered if there's no will, is respected and followed by the executor, the one who is responsible for distributing their estate. But in addition to that, there's all sorts of other things that are more in the nature of social services. There are a lot of different situations that would bring someone to come to the probate court for help. If you have a senior who's a member of your family who you feel is no longer able to care for themselves properly, the probate court is a place that you may be able to go to for help. Sometimes the appointment of a conservator is a way to remedy that. A conservator is just someone who is given the legal authority to act for the protection of someone who no longer is able to act for themselves well enough. So if somebody, for example, isn't able to maintain their own housing consistently, maybe they no longer are able to pay the rent on time, or they no longer have the mental faculties to make sure that they're getting the groceries that they need, or maybe they're not able to handle their money properly and it's being dissipated. The appointment of a conservator is one way to fix that. It puts those types of responsibilities in the hands of somebody else who's appointed by the probate court and overseen by the probate court, and is accountable to the probate court, most importantly. That if there is any complaint by anybody else that the conservator is not doing his job properly, that the judge can call in the conservator for a hearing and examine those allegations and look at the evidence of what they've done and not done, and set things right if they need to be. But there are a lot of other ways that the probate court can get involved in a situation where intervention is needed. The appointment of a guardian for a minor child in a situation sometimes is a way to remedy it. DCF will get involved when there are allegations of neglect or abuse, but there aren't always allegations that will give rise to an investigation. DCF doesn't act on every single complaint. And if somebody files a complaint about how somebody is parenting a child or somebody who's caring for a child, and DCF chooses not to act, well, one thing they can do is bring it to the attention of the probate court. And if the probate court feels that the appointment of a different guardian is appropriate, that can be considered. Sometimes that's something that can be done.
Those were some of the toughest cases I had to handle,
Really?
determining whether to, remove guardianship or custody of a child from his or her parents and place a relative in control. Because, DCF will bring, in cases where DCF has concerns, but there is a relative standing by and willing to take charge of the situation if possible, DCF will often come to the probate court. The nice thing about the probate court is the procedures are simpler. And everybody I knew who came into court, they might have been just puffing me up a little bit because I was the judge, and you have to be careful for that. But they would say, "Oh, I'd much rather be in here with you, Judge O'Brien, than being in the Superior Court," because the Superior Court procedures are more technical, and a lot of times the reason you really need a lawyer is because of the process, not so much the substance. And the Superior Court is definitely more formal. The judges wear robes. I never wore robes when I was in the probate court, and I don't see John McGrath wearing robes either. It's a much more informal court, and I like it that way. I really do. I know you go to court a lot now, and you're used to that. He's wearing a suit and tie. I'm casually dressed. Well, I'm 81 years old. I need a break. Anyway, we're going to come back after our sponsors get a chance to talk about their businesses and whatnot, and we really appreciate our sponsors, especially the Gates Group, Gates GMC, Nissan, Columbia Ford, Kia, Craig, and Denny Gates. Thank you. We'll be right back after these messages from our wonderful sponsors. Hey, the sponsors the potential temporary sponsors, because we don't get the same ones all the time. We do have Gates all the time, but we don't get everybody else. But, they might have known Susan wasn't going to be on the show. So, and it was only going to be me. So, we didn't get as many sponsors for the mid-show break. Anyway, we were talking about what the probate court does with children's cases. And we had a special children's court created by the legislature. In fact, I had a lot to do with it. Back in, I'd say about 2003, 2004. And that covered all of Windham County and half of Talon County. And the chief judge came up one day of the state of Connecticut for probate, Judge Lawler from Waterbury, and he said, "Well, you guys have to vote, and you have to pick one of you to be the chief judge, the administrative judge of the probate court." And I ran for it, and I won. And I was able to do some supervision of some of the judges back then. Some of the judges back then were not lawyers. And then Susan Johnson and Edith Prague went to the Capitol when they found that out. They didn't know that, and they said, "Gee, I think the judges should be lawyers." And we don't want to cut anybody out. And some of the non-lawyer judges were pretty darn good. But when you're dealing with sometimes you're dealing with constitutional issues. And it's really important to understand the United States Constitution, due process, equal protection, things like that. And so it was changed over probably around 2007, 2008, so that you had to be a lawyer in order to be a probate judge. And of course, you are well qualified for that. Now, you've been a lawyer for quite a while now.
I've been practicing law for 12 years, and that whole 12 years I've been right here on Main Street in Willimantic. First, we were a few doors up the street at 746, and then a couple years ago, because I rent space from another attorney, the two of us moved to 700 Main Street next to the pedestrian bridge where I am now. But that's been my whole practice the entire time, Willimantic, and I've met a lot of people for a lot of different types of cases, and I feel like I've got friends in the community that we've been through the wars together for all different types of cases, but they help teach me some of the challenges that they face in a lot of different contexts that will serve me well when I'm trying to make decisions on the bench in the probate court if I end up having the privilege to serve.
And you know this community really well. You also know the surrounding communities, because I mean, I was with you last weekend, for example. We were at the Lebanon Fair, and everybody was very nice, and we had a great time. And then we went to a concert up in Chaplin. So I mean, you've been getting around, and the people, you got support from Chaplin at the convention. You got support from Lebanon, and I think the people of this area, right close by the court in Wyndham, understand, how we need somebody from this region up here to be our judge, somebody who understands things here rather than in a town that's pretty far away. So I think it's so important, with the court having been in place for 300 years, to continue to have a judge from this neck of the woods. And you're the only candidate who's running in the primary who can make that claim.
I agree. I believe I am, and it's not something that is unusual or odd or surprising to me that somebody from elsewhere would want to represent this part. I mean, it's a great job. Dennis, you yourself,
Yep.
Have spoke well of serving and
Fulfilling.
And how fulfilling, exactly, how fulfilling it is to hold that seat and have that privilege and that opportunity. But somebody's motivation for holding that seat is something that should be very important when deciding who is going to get the privilege. My motivation in practicing law has never been personal enrichment. If somebody were to, see my 2003 Buick Century parked outside my office, I don't think they'd necessarily identify it as an attorney's mode of transportation, but it gets me from point A to point B, and that's all that's important to me. I'm not in it to enrich myself or accumulate wealth. I'm in it to get the satisfaction of doing something to help people every day. When you get your law degree, it's if you've ever had the privilege of passing the bar, to me at least, it felt like getting a superpower. It felt like receiving this gift, this ability to do something for other people that not everyone could do. And you can't fly and jump tall buildings, but you can pick up the phone and call somebody and get them to do something they might not otherwise do. You can institute litigation, which in certain situations can be quite persuasive, to try to resolve a situation for somebody. You can do all sorts of things. And I've always tried to use that power, not for my own benefit, but for the benefit of others to the extent I could. There's a guy up the street who comes and sees me regularly, Andy Martin. If you're out there, I'm name checking you, buddy. And he always stops in and tells me what's going on, but he frequently has issues that he needs me to help him with, because Andy tends to focus on things that bother him, over-focus, I think. If I can criticize you, friendly advice, I think you tend to dwell on these things that bother you. For instance, a few years ago, and he lives in public housing out by Stop and Shop. And a few years ago, he came to me, and he was in a really bad mood that day because they just banned him from Stop and Shop. And he was very aggrieved, and he thought that he had the right to shop at Stop and Shop, and he wanted me to help him get back in there. And I had to explain to him, Andy, you don't have the right to shop. You have the privilege to shop there as long as they let you. But Andy is, he's a character. So there are other people in town who may know who I'm talking about. And I know Dennis does. And I said, Andy, this isn't good that you got banned. And he's like, yeah, I know, because I know, and Andy knows, he doesn't have a car. He has to get his groceries from a place that's within walking distance, and Stop and Shop is pretty much his only choice. So him getting banned from there, that's a big deal. He was more upset at the violation of his rights as he imagined them. But when we talked about it, I think I got him to appreciate that he really needed them a lot more than they needed him. And that what was at stake here wasn't really his rights so much as it was his ability to lead his life. And so I went down to Stop and Shop with him, and I got the manager to sit down with us, and I got Andy to assure the manager. And I want to tell you why he was so aggrieved. I should have told you this in the beginning. Because he did not approve of the way that they wrapped their deli sandwiches. And this bothered him, and he complained about it. And they didn't fix it, so he complained about it some more. And they told him, Andy, we're not going to change the way we wrap our deli sandwiches. And he said, well, I don't agree. And he kept complaining, and he kept complaining, and he kept complaining until they said, Andy, you can't come back here anymore. That's how much it bothered him. But we went back there, and we sat down with the manager, and I got Andy to assure him that even if he disagreed with how they wrapped the sandwiches, that he wasn't going to say another word about it. And he respectfully would like to be allowed back in to shop there because he would really like to continue to patronize their store. And Andy did that. And the manager, to his credit, allowed him to do it. And Andy brings new grievances to me on occasion, but he is able to shop at Stop and Shop now. And I feel like that was a good result. That was a good investment of 1 hour of my time that made a meaningful difference in somebody else's life. And that's the kind of thing that at the end of the day, when I go home, I feel good about. It's not whether I got a pile of money from this case or that case. It's not whether I got a new car. It's things like that. And I hope that whoever ends up on the bench of the probate court has a similar philosophy, because like any position of authority, it can be abused or it can be used for the people's benefit in the community.
Yeah, I can tell you from my own personal experience that it's very important who the probate judge is. You've got to have somebody with a big heart. And that story you just told me, I know this guy. And I know Susan has helped him a lot as well. And we get a lot of calls from him. He's a real character and we love him.
Andy is a character, and he came to me once and he said he was just talking to Susan Johnson, but I said, yeah. Sure you were. But then I saw Susan later in the day, and she said, I just talked to Andy. I'm like, wow, he really did.
Andy calls often. Oftentimes I see his number on the phone, I say, oh boy, it's Andy again. But Susan will talk. She's like you. And I was like that too when I was younger. I'm not as prone to do that anymore. But Susan will talk to anybody, and she will help anybody. She does all these things for people that, she doesn't get paid for that. It's who she is. And you're that kind of person too. So you'd make a good state rep someday, but don't get any ideas about her position. I want her staying there. She's doing a great job for me as well as everybody else in this town. But you know what? We need you. We need you, Matt Olkin, and we need you as our probate judge. You have that kind of big heart that is needed. That's the most important characteristic, I think. Somebody who has empathy, somebody who cares about others. And there's great examples everywhere of people who are not like that. And one of the best examples I can think of is the Republican candidate for president. Okay? So I had to get that in. But I'm happy the way things are going now. I really think things are improving in that situation. And I think maybe we're all going to be happy on November 5th when we have Kamala Harris for president and Matthew Olkin as our judge of probate. That's what I'm hoping. Anyway, I think the probate court is hey, I'm a graduate of it. I spent 12 years of my life in it, and I love it. It is so important to me. I am spending time on this campaign with Matthew because I think Matthew's a perfect fit for the court, but I also care an awful lot about the court. The court is an important part of the community in general. Windham, Hampton, Scotland, Chaplin, Lebanon. People rely on this court. people in need. Maybe you go through years and years and years and you don't have this kind of need. But when you have it, you can walk into the probate court. You'll be treated well by the clerks. They're hired for their personalities and their skills. And we always called ourselves, and it's true, a user-friendly court. And I can remember going into Superior Court back when I first started practicing law. I think it's got a lot better. They have an office now that helps people with stuff. But I remember walking in there when I was young, and they didn't know who I was, and who are you? What are you doing here? I said, I'm a lawyer, But I was a young lawyer. But now I think the courts are more user-friendly as well, the Superior Courts. But there's no court I've ever known, and that includes Judge Judy, that's as friendly as the probate courts. And we need people like Matt Olkin in the probate court. He's right here in town, office right here on Main Street. He just told you where he is. He's practicing with, I'm going to say his name, Jerome Pound. Jerome Pound. Jerome Pound, P-A-U-N. Jerry used to work for a labor union. He's been doing a lot of great work in town. Frankly, before I got a call from somebody recommending Matt, I was thinking of Jerry Pound to be the next probate judge.
But he's committed to criminal defense. That's what he does.
He has got a big heart, and he would age out real fast anyway. and so, but he is terrific. There's another lawyer in town who never practiced in town, who's another guy with a big heart, who would have made a great probate judge too, but he's retired, and that's Peter Hughes. So Peter Hughes is supporting Matt Olkin as well. So Matt has a lot of people supporting him. One of the best stories I can tell about when I was in the probate court and how much authority the probate judges have to do good was when there was a dispute there was a guy who was probably about 46, 48 years old, and he was on life support. And one half of his family wanted to pull the plug on him. The other half wanted him to survive, and it was all based on what they would get out of it if he either died or lived. And he was in a hospital in New Haven. I actually had young doctors from New Haven call. I can still see myself. I was in my office late at night. They called me at night and said, Judge, we really want you to issue an order allowing us to pull the plug on this guy. He is not going to survive. And one of them actually said to me, we could use the bed. And I said, sorry, I'm not doing that. And, get the long story short, the guy survived, and he made it, and he went back to work and everything. And Jack Warnacchia, the late, great Jack Warnacchia, who was the lawyer in this town, and who didn't hand out praise that easily, believe me. He saw me walking down the street. He was driving down the street. He slammed on the brakes. He jumped out of his car, ran over to me and said, Judge, you saved that guy's life. And I said, I'm getting all choked up just talking about it. And I said, yes, I know. And and I was so pleased that Jack recognized me in that way. I never expected that from him or any other lawyer. And it was just the feeling I got from that was amazing, because I mean this family was pushing real hard. They had a lawyer who was pushing me, and Jack was representing the other side of the family. And the guy survived. And it happened again in another case. It wasn't quite as dramatic, but the probate court judge has a lot of authority, especially in cases like that. When there's in cases that sometimes can be a matter of life and death. Sometimes a children's case can be a matter of life and death, because the parent, a woman may have a boyfriend, and she's living with a boyfriend who doesn't care a whit about the kids. And we've had cases in this town where little kids have been hurt really badly and sometimes killed, but they never got to probate court, or else we would have handled it. But it is an important job. It can be a matter of life and death, and we need somebody just like Matt Olkin who really cares about others, who cared enough about his friend Andy to take him down to Stop and Shop and talk him into compromising so that he can continue to shop there and eat, which is important, pretty vitally important to any human being. So anyway, I mean, I just think this people need to understand this election that's coming up on the 13th of August with early voting from August 5th through August 11th is vitally important to the people of this region, no matter who you are. No matter who you are, because you may need the probate court, your friend, your relatives may need the probate court someday, and you're going to want somebody in there who's in there because they care and because they're capable. And Matt Olken fits the bill on both counts.
Dennis has high praise, and I really appreciate it.
Well, I wouldn't listen. I don't do that. I'm a little bit like Jack Warnaccia. I don't do that just for anybody.
I'm well
And
aware.
you have made an impression on me, and when I support somebody, I support them all the way. And I've been supportive of you ever since the convention. And my support for Matthew Olken grows every day. And and it grows even more so just listening to him talk today with me on Let's Talk About It. Very, very good. So, again, it's very important for people to consider, if you're a Democrat, because only Democrats can vote in this primary, consider voting on line. Matt is on line 1A. He's on the top line. There's only 2 candidates, and Matt Olken is the Democratic candidate on the top line, and he needs your vote if he's going to make it to the November 5th election, the presidential election. And I'm hoping he does, and I'm looking forward to the day when he is sworn in as the next probate judge in the more than 300-year-old Wyndham Probate Court in all its iterations, now combined with 5 other towns. I'm looking forward to that, Matt.
I'm looking forward to the opportunity.
We're coming down to our last minute and a half. What would you like to say to the people out there?
I'd just like to say, when you consider which Democratic candidate would best serve Wyndham, consider what they've done with their power and their privilege to this point. Have they, worked for a large firm helping the powerful annihilate the powerless, or have they worked for the benefit of others? And I would like everybody to take this election personally because there's a lot at stake.
Thank you very much, Matt Olken. Real pleasure to have you on the air. We've got Matt Rupar here. I got 2 Matts today. Did I say that before?
I don't think so.
I guess I was going to, but I didn't. And I don't think I've ever had 2 Matts in the studio before. And one of you spells your name with 2 T's. That's Matthew Rupar, and the other one is Matthew Olken, who spells his name with 1 T.
My parents wanted me to be different. They gave me 1.
1 T, yeah. Okay, I have a phone with lots and lots of names on it, and believe me, there is one other person on there that spells it with a 1 T.
Oh,
So
well,
you're not the only one.
I didn't claim to be completely unique.
You're special, man, but not so special in that regard. Not completely, totally alone in your being special. Well, we miss Susan Johnson from being on the show, but I will assure you she'll be back next week. We'll have another great show for you. Let's talk about it, and thanks again to Denny and Craig Gates for continuing to make it possible for us to bring you these great shows, and also to Matthew Rupar. Thank you so much, Matt. We're real proud of you having your own show on at 4 p.m. or 4:05, is it?
4:05.
4:05. Yeah, gotta get the news in first. Okay, we'll be back next week. Thanks for listening, folks. Remember, Democrats, vote in the primary. Vote for Matt Olken for probate judge.